Okay, now we're going to continue on our discussion of plural nouns in Pashto. So we're going to talk about some of the weird ways that things turn into plurals, some exceptions, things like that, and then also about how we inflect these plural nouns. So there are some irregular plurals in Pashto that you have to just learn or get used to. For instance, injale is a girl, but girls is injune. Zui is a son, but zaman is sons. Khor for sister, or khwendi for sisters. Rur, brother. Runa for brothers. These you'll just get used to. A lot of these are family and relationship terms. There's also Arabic plurals in Pashto. There's a lot of Arabic words that have come into Pashto, and people use their special Arabic forms with them as well sometimes. For instance, kanun is law, and kawanin is laws. Muhajir is an immigrant. Muhajirin is immigrants. Okay, that looks like a bit of a pattern, but then there's other ones like maktab, which is school, or makatib for schools. We have marhala for stage, as in a stage in a process, and marahil for stages. Now, don't worry about memorizing all these. Just be aware that these words will come up, and they don't make much sense because they don't follow the Pashto forms for plurals. It's because they're coming straight from Arabic and they're using the Arabic plural forms. So again, these are just things that you'll learn through exposure, and just be aware that these things will come up. Another interesting thing is that there are pattern number 1 feminine nouns. Like, for instance, khaza is a pattern 1 feminine noun, but there's some of these nouns that just don't have an on the end of them. For instance, uraz, day. This is a feminine noun. And if we look at the inflections, it goes uraz, urazi, and urazu. Now, normally in the pattern 1 feminine nouns, there would be an on the end, but we don't say uraza. We say uraz. So when these become plural, if we inflect them to make them plural, then they're just going to jump from uraz to urazi. Days. Like if I say 3 days, dre urazi. Another example of this would be lar for road. Again, if we look at the inflections, lar and lari. This is a feminine noun. It's not a masculine noun. It's definitely feminine, but it just doesn't have an on the end, which a pattern 1 feminine noun normally would. But if we were to inflect it or make it plural, it goes from lar to lari. Sometimes people will say lara and it'll have the a on the end. Sometimes it won't. It'll just be lar and it'll turn to lari. So some more examples of these kind of words. There's a whole bunch of them, like brastan for a blanket, mangal for a claw, miasht for a month. I won't read them all, but you can see them here. And just know that these are actually feminine nouns. You can read about more of these in the Lingdoc's Pashto grammar, but you have to use the feminine inflection when you turn these into plural. For instance, for miasht is yoa miasht is 1 month, and dre miashte would be 3 months. But there's also pattern 1 masculine nouns, and sometimes people will add like feminine plurals to these things. So there'll be like pattern 1 masculine nouns that pretend like they're pattern 1 feminine nouns when they turn plural. What am I talking about? For instance, the word zal for time. Like 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. Sometimes people will say zaluna for times, the normal masculine plural. But a lot of times they'll just say zali, and that will somehow turn into a feminine plural. Don't ask me why. Motar, again, for car. Sometimes people will say motaruna, cars, just using the regular masculine plural. Sometimes people will say motari, and it'll somehow turn into like a feminine plural. Chakar, for a stroll or a walk or a trip. People will say chakaruna for, strolls, walks, trips, or they'll just say chakari. So they would say, dwi der chakaruna wahal. They were walking around a lot or traveling around a lot. Or dwi der chakari waheli. You'll hear both of those. So sometimes, for some reason, these pattern 1 masculine nouns turn feminine in the plural, and people just use the feminine form to make the plural as if they were pattern 1 feminine. Again, don't ask me why. And also some nouns just are plural. For instance, jawar, corn. That is a masculine plural noun. Darugh, we think of that in English as a singular thing, but in Pashto, that is plural. Uba, water. Again, this is a feminine plural noun. So if we were to use this in a sentence, jawar pachashividi. We don't say pochshevede. It's not a singular has been cooked. It's pachashividi. And if we say the water is cold, we say uba saridi. It's plural and it's feminine. So our little adjective there, sor, has to get inflected to the feminine plural form. And our equative uses the third person plural form because water is just plural. Okay, so what if we need to inflect these plural nouns? If we review to what I was talking about when I mean inflection, I mean when we inflect or change a word for these 3 reasons: for if it's a plural, if it's in a sandwich, or if it's a subject of a past tense transitive verb. For instance, with the word sare for man, if we make this plural, we're going to inflect it to sari. If it's in a sandwich, again, we're going to inflect it the exact same way, sari. If it's a subject of a past tense transitive verb, again, inflected the same exact way, sari. But what happens if it's plural and in a sandwich? Well, then we have to double inflect it to sariu. It's like we're pressing the button twice. We're using the second inflection. Same thing if it's plural and it's also the subject of a past tense transitive verb. We use that double inflection. So the question is, we've been using these nouns with plural endings like mashuman for children. So this is plural already. It's like almost like we've used the first inflection, right? So it's like it's plural. It's one reason to inflect. But what if it's also in a sandwich? Well, then we have to use the double inflection. And so we say mashumano. For example, if I say, Hara la mashumano sara lubiki. He's playing with the children. This is in a sandwich there, la mashumano sara, so we have to inflect it. It's plural, but it's also in a sandwich, so we have to use the second inflection. And when we have these plural endings on the end of the noun, then the second inflection is just going to be the o on the end. Same thing if we have a subject of a past tense transitive verb. That's also plural. Like if we have children that are a subject of a past tense transitive verb, the ones that did some transitive verb. So, for example, mashumano zawulidam, the children saw me. Here, the children are a subject of a past tense transitive verb, and so we can't say mashuman zawulidam, we have to say mashumano zawulidam. Now, how do we do this second inflection of nouns with plural endings? Well, we just add a wow on the end. Like mashuman becomes mashumano for that second inflection. Kitabuna becomes kitabuno. And notice when we have a little vowel on the end, we just cover it over with the o sound. So kitabuna turns into kitabuno. Mamagan, uncles, becomes mamagano. And kazian, judges, would just be kaziano. So pretty easy. We just add a o on the end of these nouns with plural endings. So for instance, kazian mavini, the judges see me. This is present tense. Kazian is the subject of a present tense transitive verb. But if it's past tense, like kaziano zawulidam, the judges saw me, then we have to inflect it and we add the o on the end of it. If this past tense, present tense thing is freaking you out, how different those sentences look, don't worry, there'll be other videos that explain exactly how this works. For now, just notice how when we use a subject with a past tense transitive verb, we have to inflect it. And we're already using the plural, so we have to use the second inflection here and add the o. For another example, alta mashumandi, there are children there. This is plural, but not inflected for any other reason. But if we say, Haga mashumanuta rodei warkei, he is giving the children food. here, the children are in a sandwich with ta, mashumano ta. So we have to inflect mashuman to be mashumano. Haga mashumano ta rore warkavi. So let's look at some more examples with some feminine nouns. Pishogani, cats, would be pishogano. Again, when we have the little vowel on the end, we just cover it up with the O. Or ruavi, for cows, would be ruavo. Or if we use the ruagani with that ending, then it would be ruagano. Sakhtiani, difficulties like that, would be sakhtiano. Some more examples. If I say pishogani mawini, the cats see me, then we don't have to inflect the cats because it's just a present sentence. But if it's past tense and it's a transitive sentence, the cats are the subject, then it's pishogano za wulidam. Pishogano za wulidam. We can't say pishogani za wulidam. We have to say pishogano za wulidam. Alta ruavidi. There are cows there. Just plural, not inflected for another reason. But if we put those cows in a sandwich, if we make a sandwich, a cow sandwich, then we have haga ruavota wachawarachavi. He's giving the cows hay. So ruavota, that is a sandwich, and we have to inflect the cows because it's plural, but it's also in a sandwich, so we have to use that second inflection. And there's our sandwich there, ruavota, like that. And if you're wondering how warachavi is giving, it's actually like putting towards them, kind of like you put the hay towards them, which is how someone might say that. But what about inflecting nouns that are just plural like that, like we talked about, like uba, water? That is a plural noun on its own. And if we have to inflect it because it's in a sandwich or because it's a subject of a past tense transitive verb, we still just add the O on the end like that, ubo. For example, alta ubadi, there is water over there. Notice it's plural, ubadi. But if I say dwi pooboki dubigi, they are sinking in water. Puuboki, in the water, and because that's the water, uba is a plural noun, and we stick it in a sandwich, then it has to inflect. Puuboki dubigi. Ghanam, wheat, that is also a plural noun. And so when we inflect that, it's going to be ghanamo. So, das mung ghanamdi, this is our wheat. But if we use the wheat in a sandwich, then we would say, ghanamo tardiri ubamo warkawa. Don't give a lot of water to the grain. Notice here, ghanamota is a sandwich, ta is like sandwiching up with that word ghanam, and so we have to inflect it to ghanamo. Also remember that uba is feminine plural, so notice the dir for a lot of, diri, we have to say diri, uba, lots of water, and we're using the feminine plural inflection because water is feminine plural. Okay, that about does it for today's exploration of all these wonderful weirdnesses in Pashto. And yeah, feel free anytime to look at the Lingdocs Pashto dictionary as a reference and just try to understand this in little bits at a time if this is all overwhelming.